Okay, on the show today, health coach and breathworker Ryan Carroll. So I like the diversity of his stuff, the range of what he does. And also, as soon as I get a guest on, I know if we're going to vibe or not just by their attitude. And I think Ryan and I are going to get on great. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to meet you in
Let,
person.
let's hear a little bit about your story, Ryan. How did you get into holistic coaching and breathwork and fitness and all the stuff you do now?
Okay, so the journey has been, I'm 40, so it's always an interesting part of life. Um, but growing up, just a chubby boy with brutal anxiety, panic attacks. That was kind of my MO, and that's what I went through. And very grateful for it. It's what brought me into my career. My career is now shifted unintentionally into a lot of anxiety work, helping people with anxiety. But at the baseline, my career has been a personal trainer in fitness, nutrition, guidance for the past 20 years. And I'd say over the past 8 to 10 years, kind of transitioned more into that end of the mindset, system regulation, body work, still applying all the methods that I believe in terms of I think fitness, movement, nutrition, our inputs are just as important. And those little things like breath work, which is my main tool, I would say, are just that. They're tools to the basis of what we do day to day.
Nice. So you mostly teaching online, one-to-one, seminars in beautiful Costa Rica. Like, what's your main kind of way of applying this stuff?
Yeah, my main right now is online. That's how I work with clients. And once a year right now, I do retreats as well. And I'm bringing in another one-to-one style retreat. And that's probably coming up next year. But retreats have always been a thing. I've been doing retreats for 10 years, and I was trying to grow those a little bit more, but now I'm kind of just going to stick with the once a year intensive we just love doing it when it's once a year. I have a partner with that. And yeah, bring them out to Costa Rica or Mexico or wherever. We're going on vacation, move out into nature and
Yeah, no,
enjoy.
I get it. Just did an intensive week in Slovenia and nature there, and it's just so nice to get everyone just comes down from city life and chills out a little bit. And then obviously all the cross fertilization between the students in the breaks and the nature really enhancing what you're doing and having that container. It's I think that's just one of the best ways to learn anything embodied.
Easy, yeah. And just to immerse somebody and be like, this is what it would be like if you could immerse yourself in the lifestyle a little bit more. And then like, being in there for a week, it's a life changer. You're like, all right, so how do I apply this at home? What is
Yeah.
the
Yeah. People get that really deep sense of what a settled nervous system or deeply embodied in my case can be like. And
Mhm.
that comes through the nature, through the community, through a little time. I've noticed when I do workshops in cities, they go out for lunch and they come back stressed, and we have to kind of start again in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas when you're on retreat, you don't have that issue. If I have a worry, it's just that sometimes it's so different from their normal life that is it like just a special place in Bali or Thailand or and then they go back to like London and they're like, what the fuck? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Is the transfer there? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, so like well, the big focus for me in retreats is that what I notice is that people just with everything cling to. So we have people that come to every single retreat, and I'm like, that's great. Like we would love you to be there, but also, are you integrating? You bring it home? Are you using the tools? So we started focusing on how do we help them apply this at home at the best they can, because you come back to city and going from the jungle in Costa Rica where there's no Wi-Fi, no cell phone signal, no TVs, no social media to news and that kind of stuff to input, not all that stuff asking for your attention, and you bring them back to normal life and it's just immediately back to then they have this crash of of like their family and the people that support them. So yeah, there's a lot of aspects of that we want to build um, into the program as they go out, and that's what continuing Zoom calls. We feel like that's really important to keep people accountable and see where they're at.
That's
But it's
great. The integration's really key, isn't it? And I always say the ideal for us is train with us online and do a retreat. So then you get the
yeah,
depth and the integration. Like that's the ideal if possible, but some people can only do one or the other.
yeah.
Hmm. Good. So you saw anxiety. So 10 years ago, I didn't hear the word anxiety so much. Now, every young person I know says they have anxiety. Now,
Yeah,
some
yeah.
I don't know, it's like self-diagnosis, but some
Uh,
of it is the world is more anxiety provoking or we're less resilient to anxiety. Just jam on anxiety for a little bit because I hear the word so much.
well, that's you look at like concept creep, where like the meaning of the original word has just been like, it's just like more and more stuff is dumped into that original
Yeah.
definition, and that's okay. I mean, it's somewhat. I mean, it kind of dilutes what the essence of anxiety is, but um, I I think what we're looking at here is from all of my approaches are from an ancestral health approach as far as the base goes. Like, how did our biology, which is as hunter gatherers, which hasn't changed a lot now, opposed to our advancements in society and technological advancements and all the good stuff as well, but how that creates and how the news and sales and algorithms are just preying on our attention. Which, if you look at that hunter gatherer's attention, we're meant to be vigilant in those situations. So certain situations that I see that are a problem in modern society, why we have so much anxiety, is, yeah, obviously the food systems, but the bigger things is that biologically we are vigilant in a situation where we leave to go hunt or gather, and now we're away from our tribe, which is a stressor already, and we're in nature and we're hearing the rustle of leaves. It could be a predator prey. It's taking our attention. It's turning on our nervous system in different directions. It's barometric pressure changes and wind blowing, so there could be a storm and we need to get in shelter and safety. So we look at that person and that biology, and we apply that to a city with your phone, with people talking, with cars driving by, with the news, telling you that there's danger everywhere. But if you were to just kind of look up and look around, typically,
Pretty
oh,
chill.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not too bad outside.
That looks
So
okay, you
yeah,
know?
like yeah, I mean, there's some wind blowing, but I'm pretty good in here.
I was on my phone looking at Facebook earlier, and it was like death, disease, war, politics,
Yeah.
crazy, Olympics, decadence, evil. And I just looked around and I was like, okay, I mean, there's a sketchy teenager smoking a spliff over there.
Uh-huh.
That's about it. I was
Yeah.
like, this is a pretty cool place.
Yeah,
Like,
not too bad. Yeah.
yeah, it's like this is very different than the mental space that my
Uh-huh.
phone's creating for me, you know?
Yeah, you have access to a billion people's lives going on. So like one bad thing happens, you're gonna see it, and it's just like just everything is terrible. So yeah, that is kind of a mindset shift. I don't know what you think about that, but it's like I feel like every generation says this. Like things are just getting worse. This place is just getting worse, and I just I don't see it. I see there's like louder people saying more ridiculous shit, but
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky because I think it depends where you are. You're in Costa
yeah,
Rica,
yeah,
so
yeah,
don't be
yeah.
talking shit about the rest of the world, mate. And it's
If we're a
and we
little
are
slower here, I can't get things as fast. There's no Amazon. It's really
you know
tough.
Amazon like Chinese comedian that talks about getting Amazon. You want it now. You want it the day
Yeah,
before you wanted it. But it's
yeah,
I mean there is some case for like we're in a period of decline culturally. I think there's a case for that. But then there's also this Steven Pinker case that we've come a long way, and both of those things can be true, right?
yeah,
There's a
yep,
developmental case that people are developing, and there's a decadence case that things are declining, and there's also just sort of historical economic factors like like life expectancy has just gone down a bit in the US. Like that's just the fact, like something has happened to make that. And yeah, obviously it depends. We have listeners in Ukraine and listeners in the Middle East and all sorts of
yeah, yeah,
places.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But yeah, on the whole, as you say, like, I mean, is the big one simply that we're out of community? Like, I see a lot of people really trying to establish community now. Lack of co-regulation is the big one. We're
Yeah.
not really wired, as you said, through evolution to be removed from that evolutionary context. So there's the environmental context, but that social context is just shockingly isolated. I just walked by an old people's home and there's a guy that I wave to every day as I walk by. And he's the other side of a fence, and he can't open the window because it's a sort of secure old people's home, so he can't escape.
Mhm.
And he's got the 100 is on his door, and I just thought, oh God, he's just had his 100th birthday, and he's locked in an old people's home, and I'm
Mm.
waving through a cast iron fence and a piece of glass at him. And I think I'm
Yeah.
the highlight of his day, frankly, because he's always waiting
Yeah.
for his
Oh
wife.
man.
And I
Yeah.
thought, wow, he's an elder man. He's 100 years old. And here he is locked away. And I've
Yeah.
got no contact with him. And I don't think any kids have got contact with him. He's just locked in this old people's home. And it seems like something's gone horribly wrong.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think the way we should be living, based on those days of the tribal hunter gatherers, like if you look at like nowadays when we have any kind of social settings, there's some studies talking about like, our skin conductance, our heart rates, everything syncs when we're in groups with each other. So just like being around other people, we automatically sync, but we're so disconnected from the people we're around that what are we missing in that piece? Because there is no direct connection. Like if you're on the train commuting to work or something like that, it's everybody's head down. Nobody talks.
Co-dysregulation, not co-regulation, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, but like that aspect of it in terms of stress and in terms of what it does to the body, in terms of what it does to the mind and our nervous system, I think is probably one of the bigger things. And that's since 2020 when we were so pushed into solitude. I think that's why we're seeing this growth in like online communities and these kind of social settings where it's Zoom, but it's all we can get and it supports still, but I still think that there it even lacks that sense of safety that we get in our nervous system, like being around other people within an actual real life community. I think that's a big missing piece.
Yeah, yeah. If I can't lick people or bite them, then it's like
Yeah.
I want to be able to smell someone. I think something's wrong. Your brain can see someone and you can't
Yeah.
touch them or at least smell them. As an
Uh-huh.
animal, I'm like, ooh, like a dog who just feels like something's
Yeah.
wrong with this. But for some people, it is safer. For some people who are really extreme, and for them, the online. I know some students like having their camera off and just lurking, and others like that
Yeah,
they
yeah.
touch. So it
But is
doesn't. It's
that
not the
because
same
of
for everyone. But
that same issue though? Like is that because they haven't had exposure to it now that's feeding into each other? It's just like agoraphobia when you're feeding into staying home. You stay home, you convince your anxiety that it's correct, and then you stay there. And now
young
you have
people have shit social skills. That's what I've noticed. Like if I talk to a young bro
to.
in the gym, like offering him a bit of help or whatever, like really socially appropriate, chill interaction,
Yeah.
he just doesn't know what to say. He's just like,
Yeah.
like, like he just doesn't like know how to handle like a normal conversation. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, is this just because I'm on my own? Am I creepy? So I did the same with my girlfriend there. So I'm definitely not creepy because I'm with a girl. Same thing, just
Yeah.
bad or like not being able to speak. And I go, actually, I remember how awkward it was to be a teenager, but I had no alternative. So I was
Yeah.
forced into developing social skills because that was the only way I got to talk to a girl, and girls are hot. And it was the only chance I had. I had to fucking pluck up the courage to be like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
silly,
Yeah.
nice. And it's like now there's an alternative to that, right? And that's got to be tempting to use.
Especially you get takes nowadays. Like that's what I noticed. Even with like when I meet influencers, I have this thing where I'm like, all right, let's see what this is like. Because I'll look at an influencer that is like so personable online, and I'm like, all right, let's see what they're like when I chat with them, and I'm like, what the fuck? They just don't like. I don't think they get it because they get to have takes in their personality. They get to practice their
Hates? What do you mean?
personality.
They get to like
Like
do it like again and again?
like redo it. Like yeah, like when a lot of the communication is via phone or so they're like they can record a voice note and they're like, I don't like that. Let me do it
For
again.
listeners, by the way, it's actually the fifth time Ryan's tried to say that sentence. In the first four, we
Yeah.
fucked it up. We had to edit it out. And no, that's not true.
Why you calling
We
out?
have almost no editing in these. We're just
Yeah, yeah.
straight out because it's more natural. People say, "How do you make so much content?" I'm like, I don't do takes.
Don't do
Like
it.
it's one
Like,
shot. It's all
yeah,
one
yeah,
shot. Like
yeah.
there's disadvantages to that because there's a lot of umming and ahhing, but it's all one
Mhm.
shot. Okay, so anxiety. What about the breath work? Is it just like everyone's screwed up, so they need breath work as a self-regulation tool? Are you
Yeah.
doing it more like state changing? Like, tell us a little bit about the breath work you do.
Yeah, it's a what a broad term, like breath work can mean everything from holding your breath and free diving and all the way over to tripping your balls and over breathing and that kind of stuff. It's just like, but it's such an impactful tool, and it's just like I know it's growing because people are understanding that. It's also growing because people are like, oh, I can get people high and make them feel crazy and no idea why, but I'm still going to do it to people, and it's a little sketchy right now. It's a little wild west in breath, but I approach it a little bit differently than the typical, talk therapist or doctor that's just like, yo, do box breath. You know, if you're having anxiety attacks, do box breath. You know, I'm like, doing box breath when you're having a panic attack is like trying to put out a house fire with like a squirt bottle. You know, it's just like it's gonna maybe do a little bit, maybe but it's not. Is it for people that have a resilient nervous system that they've practiced and worked with? Then yeah, box breath. Like for me now, as someone who's like taken that back, when I have anxiety arising, I just pay attention to I don't do a practice. I just like pay attention to my breath. I'm like, oh, I am holding my breath. Or I'm like breathing shallow and short. That's all it really takes after you start to work on this stuff. So my approach to the breath is within the realms of applying it as from a personal trainer background, from a strength coach background, I use it the same way. I'm like, all right, what does the person need? Like, where are they lacking? So we assess the breath first. We assess the recovery, their HRV, their sleep, their lifestyle. And then I'm like, all right, so how do we apply the breath? What do they need? And one of those tests is like a few different tests to do, but CO2 tolerance is what we want to look, air hunger tolerance, that discomfort of air hunger. And when we practice that, a few things happen and it changes a lot. So just looking at air hunger, that's the first practice we'll talk about. When we practice that and you become more tolerant to having CO2 in the body, then you have more CO2, which means that you can absorb more oxygen, which means that your blood vessels can dilate, which means your heart rate can slow, which means you can be in a calmer state. And CO2 also directly affects your sensitivity to CO2 directly affects your amygdala and how you respond to threat and fear. So just that practice right there can have profound effects on people. Now, again, the squirt bottle fire analogy, like if you don't sleep, you eat like shit, you never move, you have a terrible social structure and you just like hate your life, I mean, it's not going to do too much.
You came from a fitness background. First of all, show us your guns.
Yeah, those. I mean, oh,
boom. Okay, so looking good with the tattoos, man. Ladies, if you're on the podcast and not on YouTube, you're missing out. Yes. So what I like about fitness trainers is they understand you've got to look at the whole thing. So if you're working with a strength coach, he's like, hey, you need to bench press this, and this is but he's like, look, you can't eat shit, you can't sleep like shit. You can't have loads of stress. They're the basics if you want to, lose muscle, lose muscle, build muscle or lose weight. And they kind of get that. Whereas a lot of embodiment teachers, I feel like they're like, do this breathwork technique. And it's like, well, yeah, but are they sleeping or what's their diet? Like, let's say they'd say, hey, Wim Hof's really good for everyone, which, it's good for a bunch of people. I've done it for a few years. Some people like it, but there's definitely people who shouldn't do that if the rest of their lifestyle is not so, like if your stress levels are high anyway. I remember talking to a testosterone coach I was working with, and he's like, how's your stress levels? I was like, pretty high with work. He's like, okay, so why are you taking cold showers? You already got a lot of stress in your life. You don't need more stress. Stop doing the breath holds. He's like, for someone who's, life's kind of chill, then yeah, that would be great for them. So you can't just take a practice out of someone's whole lifestyle, right?
Yep, exactly. That's the whole point. So it's the frustrating part within breathwork right now is that there are clans, there's cults, there's it's within, like, Wim Hof is definitely a cult. That's for sure. And I mean, I love Wim in terms of like
Wim's nice, but the organization, that's a different thing.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, he's a nut job and I love him, but like he's like brought so much attention and wealth and everything to the practices. And I love cold exposure. I love breath work. I love the Wim Hof practice for me. I'll do a similar practice. But yes, people, high stress, anxiety, that can just set them into a panic cycle, and they just, it could just, it's just not for everybody. But then we look at like the other end of it. We look at, there's like holotropic breath work, rebirthing, where it's like the deeper stuff, which is profound, but definitely not for everybody. Especially not.
That stuff's like drugs, man. Like if you've got mental health issues, it's not always advised. Like I used to do that once a week, and I'd trip balls on it. Like that's strong stuff. That's not for everyone.
No, and that's the problem, is that people are doing I mean, if we're lucky, they're doing a weekend certification, and they're trauma informed, and now they're okay to teach everybody. They don't talk about the contraindications or what you could be getting into going through this, or how to integrate afterwards. And that's if we're lucky. And then most of the people are doing a class and like, I could teach this shit. I can make people just hyperventilate.
What are the contraindications? Like if you're already an influencer and you're a bit of a twat, then
Yeah, yeah.
that's
That no,
totally
that's an indication that you should start to teach, I think.
to do breath work or
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
Like I
yeah.
feel like people that have got big egos, and I could be one, there's certain practices that could just inflate me.
Uh-huh.
Certain practices I feel like are like, cocaine, when people are on cocaine and they think they're
Yeah,
really fucking cool. I
yeah,
feel
yeah.
like there are some psychedelics and some breathwork practices that are the sort of holistic cocaine.
Yeah,
And people like me with big egos probably shouldn't go near them. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. Uh-huh. Well, that is like for influencers, they're like they'll have or influencers, just breath coaching. There's a lot of ego there because it's like someone comes out of that and they're always like, "What the fuck just happened? Like,
Mm.
what did I just do?" I'm like, and you uncovered some trauma from that they don't even remember, like some repressed, suppressed memories or trauma or emotion or whatever. Um, and you just help this person. And meantime, little Joey's in the corner, like having a full-on panic attack because he wasn't supposed to be there, and you didn't talk about what could go wrong. So potentials, like there's like physiological stuff. So people with like actual psychosis, epileptic,
Hmm.
those kind of
Totally.
things can happen, like glaucoma and detached retinas, and then just general anxiety as well. Like for that one, general anxiety for me in that practice is interesting because that practice gave me anxiety when I first did it,
Mm.
and then I was able to regulate it back down. So it was like almost like I exposed myself to anxiety so I could show myself I could come out of it. So while it could throw someone into a panic attack and maybe cause, fear, it also might not. So what I recommend with that is a titration of intensity there. So I have like recorded sessions that are like 20 minutes, and
Right,
in
right.
my sessions, just so like they can experience like what it's going to feel like. So once you start to understand like, oh, I'm going to get the tingles, I'm going to get the tetany, I'm gonna feel a little lightheaded, I'm going to feel out of it, but then you coach them back down into you know regulation and just help them kind of come back. I think that's where we kind of just slowly add a little bit more intensity to it as they
No,
feel like.
and that's just like smart nervous system aware, trauma aware principles like titration, dosage. And I guess if people are in if we look at it polyvagally, if people are in quite a shutdown state, some of my students are definitely in that shutdown, particularly East Europeans, for example, that's just culturally there. As they kind of gain energy, they don't come into regulation straight away. They actually come into sympathetic dysregulation. They come into the fight flight or the anxiety, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah,
that's how
yeah.
they're actually their nervous system's kind of coming up in a positive direction, but
Mhm.
that it looks like they've gone from okay to fucked up. They're just actually one
Mhm.
step closer to okay, but they
Yeah.
have to go through fucked up and not, have
Yeah,
damage.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's a good way to put that. I mean, it's yeah, like everything within the breath realm is can be so impactful if you apply it to the right person, or if you, and that's the problem, is like nobody really knows how to apply it to themselves. So that's why it is kind of nice to have a coach, but then like who's the coach that I find? Am I going to find a quack that's, just like making me get high as shit and just like lose my mind, you know, um, or what's right for me? So there is some exploration that you have to do, just exploration with caution and with awareness. And that kind of leads to the other end of it, where it's like the breath hold work, which is Buteyko, oxygen advantage, that kind of stuff, where it's like minimal breathing. And it's still kind of a cult too. Like that group will kind of shit on this group fully and just like discredit it. And I'm just like, come on, like both ends can apply to both to people, and it's
Clearly, someone's getting good from both, or they wouldn't be around that long. I know smart
uh-huh.
people that do both. And then, so we've got the Wim Hof, the holotropic, we've got the Buteyko, kind of minimal breathing. And then, what about the kind of 5-5 people? The, what is it, conscious connected breathing? There's a whole group
Yeah,
of people.
connected. Yeah, still be in that like that over breathing realm of
Uh,
you got like pranayama, maybe like calming, just like the more chill stuff. You got the yogic breathing, which like some of that's intense. The Kundalini and the Kriyas and all that stuff. And um, yeah, I mean, it's a realm. It's like you look at it and you're like, all right, how do I apply this? You got your one rep max over here in holotropic, or your volume. I guess that would be volume at that point, but it's
volume
the
training.
yeah. So you got your volume training, and then down here you got your strength training, and you got to figure out what works for you. So, but as a base for just like general health and what I would use for a client, I I believe that like the I use a lot of freediving techniques. That's kind of how I got into this, was through freediving.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm a terrible freediver. I can go horizontal. Like down, I go like 30 feet and my ears won't clear. So I kind of gave up on that dream. But the practices I learned from it are what got me into breath work. So it's just like how like I would say I got into meditation probably 15, no, actually longer. Yeah, like 15, 20 years ago, who knows? And by getting into meditation, I mean, I struggled with meditation for another 10 years until I got into, um, I did my first freediving certification and was like floating in the water. And I went from a 30-second breath hold to like holding my breath for 3 minutes and just like coming up and being like fully still, fully calm and just being like, what the fuck? I need to learn whatever that is.
Cool. So you've done a lot of other stuff. You've done Paul Check's work, I think.
Yeah,
We've had him on the show a couple of times. Good
I
guy.
recall. Yeah.
Really innovative. For those who don't know, Paul Check's probably like the lead name in like holistic fitness and
Mhm.
strength training, kind of like one of the more
So
experienced
smart
people.
people are, man. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and just so many
Wow.
diverse interests and kind of
Yeah,
wild. And he'll say
yeah,
something that's genius and something else. I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like it's just kind of all
yeah.
sorts of crazy cool stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he's very likable as a person.
yeah,
When we work with people, kind of, on conferences and events and stuff, we sort of see behind the scenes a little bit. And
yeah,
he's always been someone that's been sort of good to us. You kind of get
yeah.
to see the business side, the other side of people.
Mhm, mhm.
You've done like barefoot stuff. Like, what else do you use as well as the breath work?
Yeah, so yeah, the breath is the main tool, and then we look at the lifestyle. So lifestyle, biggest things for me, and this is something else that I run too, but like nature in terms of like how to utilize it. So nature, you hear it all the time. People are with anxiety, are just like, I don't want to fucking hear about it. Like, yeah, I'll go out and like sit in the, it's not gonna do anything. But there's a lot of science that backs like what nature does to our nervous system, just the sounds, the smells, the like the air quality. But one thing that I facilitate these. I try to do them every year, but and I try to do myself one a year is a vision quest, and I feel like these are really powerful because what it does to the nervous system, it is a stressor when you think about what you're eliminating. You're eliminating like the three taboos of food, which is a safety thing. Fasting is stressful. You don't have shelter, which is another safety aspect, and you don't have your community. So those three things are eliminated. But what happens for me when you do that, you kind of rely on nature for your safety, your support, and it allows your body will start to slow, but your psyche just begins to unravel. And within that support and with that exposure, I feel that is another one of those healthy stressors, even for some people that may already have high stress, depending on where they're at and as we go through the interview process. But I feel being in that situation again, immersed fully into nature, is a profound and really tough, not always pleasant experience. But the aspect that I love about it is boredom. So boredom is something that like like a practice of boredom doesn't, like when is there a deer walking around like, God, it's boring out here. It's nothing.
Eye rolling, face
Yeah, just,
palming with his two flips.
oh,
Like, man,
it's just,
nothing to do but eat leaves here. It's just
oh,
rubbish.
oh, I hate it. So
Fucking bored Bambi. Got it. Why do we get bored? What's that about? Is it we're so overstimulated? We're kind of
yeah,
apparently
that's
it was
what
invented in the 18th century by rich British women who had so
I,
much leisure time that they had to invent this thing called boredom.
I believe it. Yeah, I mean, boredom is it's interesting. Like I just try to think about it. I'm like, where like it has to be from our stimulation. I mean, like the more we go, the more stimulation we have. Like you start thinking of like what people did in the '90s, the '80s, before like we had a cell phone and watch TV and scroll and communicate with everybody. Like people used to sit around and talk like the '80s. When you look at like like you watch a movie from the '80s, you're like, they weren't bored. They're doing the thing, and then you move back a little bit more, and then they lose a couple things, and slowly you get back to just like sitting in the woods, just enjoying it.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a practice. There's a lot of interesting stuff the other side of boredom. It feels to me like boredom's a barrier that stops us getting to some really rich, deep stuff. And every time I do a meditation retreat, day two, I'm like, day one, I'm just like, oh, it's nice to chill. Day two or three, I'm like, why the fuck am I here?
Uh-huh.
This shit I could be doing. I could
100%.
be fucking doing whatever. And like then I keep going, and by day 5, I'm like, oh my God, this is the most meaningful experience.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's got to be like a silent retreat or like a meditation retreat where you come back from that contrast has got to be brutal, some for I would imagine for people.
Yeah, I try and reintegrate on the last day of a silent retreat. I always turn my phone on sneakily in my room just so I can get a little bit of like normality. And then if you're smart, you get the train or the car back with some other retreatants.
Yeah.
And you can kind of like be like just weirded out when you're in the first gas station you
Yeah.
get to and they don't make eye contact and you're just
Uh,
like, who the fuck, what the fuck's wrong with this world, man? Then you can like run
yeah.
back into the car with your hippie mates. Like
Yeah.
there's ways to do it, but most retreat centers do reintegration horribly because the
Yeah.
retreat model comes from monastics, and monastics didn't have to reintegrate, so they just don't have any skill with that
Mm,
area. Monastics have loads of skill with meditation, but they don't have any skill with reintegration because it wasn't
mm,
necessary for them, as far as I can
mm,
tell. Cool. What's hot? What's the latest cool thing, Ryan, in the influence of personal growth, breathwork world?
mm.
What's like because breathwork has been around a while, and I think it's maturing now. Like, it's kind of like souped up mindfulness, right? People wanted something a bit more oomphy. I feel like now breathwork is maturing, and people are kind of being a bit more grown up about it, not just following the, as you say, the cults or the business
Yeah.
interests.
We're hoping.
Um, what do you think will be the next wave? Psychedelics? Satanism. What's hot?
I feel like there's like this. It always flows like from like the pendulum is always going. So like I feel like the pendulum in psychedelics has been up here, and I appreciate psychedelics. I mean, I'm a supporter of it. I feel like it's kind of coming back down a little bit, which might be a good thing,
Mhm.
um, in a terms of like how it's being used. What do you think on you're pretty pro psychedelic, correct?
Yeah, but I mean, with like reflections on mental health issues and dosage, set and setting. A couple of students and friends of mine are part of the guided tripping movement in Amsterdam, which feels really mature, kind of grown up approach to it,
Yeah.
not using it recreationally, using it respectfully. I think it's going to be very interesting when the main pharmaceutical companies
Mm,
that could be the birth of a whole new era. It could be the end of the world. I'm not sure yet.
yeah.
But certainly I think there was an enthusiasm that it's like, hey, you guys have forgotten about the 60s. There was this kind of naive enthusiasm.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I'd saw that with younger people, and it's like just be a little bit careful as someone who has schizophrenics in their family and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
equally, I've seen profound. I did some tripping with some Ukrainian refugees, and one of my students works with Ukrainian soldiers, and I've seen some really beautiful work
Yeah.
done with it. So yeah, mixed, but kind of the strong medicine, like handle with care, man.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I feel like so I'm in Santa Teresa, in Costa Rica, and it's a really great conscious community. And the thing that I see here, which I really love, and it's great for me too, is the like no one drinks, no one drinks
Nice.
here, which is I mean not no one, but it's a
Sure.
pretty I haven't met a lot of people that drink, and there is a party scene here too. Is we got both ends of it. It's like conscious, and then there's like the ragers, and then like occasionally bleed through of both, and then it's just like everybody's doing psychedelics and drunk at the same time. So, but in general, like the people that I surround myself with aren't drinking, and I'm seeing that as also as really getting popular. And I do love that. I think there is talking about psychedelics, a place where now people are using psychedelics at a party, and that's fine. But like, how much and like, is it melting
Yeah,
your
I
brain?
wouldn't recommend it.
What are we doing? Yeah, just like I don't know. I wouldn't want to be at a club on mushrooms, just personally. But that I feel like that's happening too, because people are like, well, I'm not hungover, but I don't know what it does to the psyche and to the brain in terms of like using it
Yeah,
as.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's strong stuff. I mean, traditional cultures might have done it 2 or 3 times in a lifetime.
Yeah, yeah,
Personally, I'm sober from drugs and alcohol, but psychedelics I count as a different category, and I set myself a limit of once a year as a hard limit. And if I'm not in the right state when I'm in Amsterdam, usually because it's legal there, so there's a sort of relaxation around it. Yeah, go to the park, it's fine. But I even would skip a year quite frequently. So
yeah,
that I think and also I'll do a whole thing beforehand with intention setting and what are we doing here, and then afterwards I remember last time I debriefed with my friend Miriam. Miriam, can look her up in Amsterdam. Does Miriam Ren Groen? I can't fucking say her surname. It's Dutch. And we had dinner with her afterwards and kind of debriefed and kind of processed it. Because without that debrief, it's hard to like harvest it. Do you know what I mean? Like if you just at a party getting high and then the next day I always make sure I'm not getting on a plane the next day, So I've got a
Yeah.
good day to just be like, whoa, what happened there? When we were talking to the ducks, what was that about? You know? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's my kind of line. I have seen people get more and more extreme in it. Like I'd be like,
Mhm.
yeah, I do mushrooms once a year in Amsterdam. People are like, hey, dude, that's nothing. I was in Mexico and we were like snorting ayahuasca out of a hooker's ass, and
Yeah.
you like inject your eye with like toad venom, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, okay, that doesn't sound so wholesome. But
No, no, it's well, that's the other thing is that people are mixing medicine. Maybe I don't have enough knowledge to understand what is meant to be with that. But um, I was part of a retreat center here in Costa Rica. Originally, why we moved down was to take over this retreat center, and just fell through. But in the meantime, we stayed there and helped facilitate some other retreats. And a couple of the retreat facilitators came in, like it's like a 25-year-old white chick that's just like a shaman now, and she's like giving people like it like was what was it a blend of? So it was a blend of psilocybin, some mushrooms, San Pedro, and it wasn't ayahuasca. But anyways, she had like three different medicines that she's just like kind of throwing at people that were like now in the world of like she's coming from Denver, so she's bringing these medicines in, and they're like curated. They're like GMO mushrooms that are just like taking the things that they want, to make it super strong and crazy and intense. And yeah, I mean, who knows if it's good or bad? I don't know. I mean, but where is that? Where
there's
is that
weird
going?
cultural mixing as well, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
everything's all coming
Definitely.
together, which is a cool thing, but it's also a
Uh-huh.
dangerous thing. So what do you think's next after the psychedelic kind of wave? People maturing with that, breath work, maturing with that. I mean, I've been around long enough that things cycle to some extent. I remember when yoga got cool. It was like my mum did yoga, and then yoga got like fashionable, and I was like, no fucking way. So like, if yoga can get cool, it could be something like everyone starts doing karate or something,
Yes.
something really old school,
Uh,
Mr. Miyagi or something like I
yeah.
don't think you can predict it, maybe, but
I mean,
I
look at
start to see
fashion or
trends.
something. Like fashion's the
Like,
same kind of thing. Like stuff like right now, like the '90s are so popular, and you're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
bad one to pick, but it's whatever, it's cool. But yeah, we don't know what's gonna click on, especially with like social media and random, like everything's so random. What will be picked up as a trend, and especially within the mental health world, like it's. I find within a lot of the times within the spiritual community, within the conscious community, is that people are trying to become most spiritual. It's like I'm trying to. I mean, it's bypassing obviously, but like it's also people are down this path where they're within a community and they're trying to do some inner work, but they're not actually getting there, and it's more projecting on what it is. So like I feel like the trendy things within spirituality are what I don't know what's going to be next and next. It's always something extreme. It's got to be like more. I'm more spiritual, or I'm going to
Yeah,
take it the
more
other way.
extreme, more extreme. I know how you get more extreme than a lot of stuff that's going on now. What
Yeah.
about for you personally? Are there particular sort of, you've done like 15 certifications, look at your website. Have you got another one that you're still learning, or are you like, no,
I'm,
I'm done with certifications
I
now?
got, I got yeah. Let's start making more money first. It's like I feel like that's another place
Uh,
with coaches is that we focus on our education so much because we want to be the best or show off to other coaches, but then we're like we got to provide for other people too.
It's the
Like
perennial student. I have students who are studying with me and they're 50 years old and they've done 20 different coaching certifications. And I'm like, hey, maybe actually just go work in the world, make a
yeah,
living, help some people, start a couple of
I think
projects, make a good, make yourself and your family some money and do some good in the world. And
yeah.
it's great to be a lifelong learner, but there comes a point where I'm not sure if that's the main, if you're under 30, that maybe that's appropriate, right? You don't set yourself up as a 25-year-old shaman just yet.
No, yeah, yeah,
And I
not
feel
yet.
like once people have got 10 years of learning under their belts, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe I do one course every year just to kind of keep it like I'm in a learning mode.
Mm-hmm.
And that's enough for me, like one course a year.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, because then, I mean, honestly, like if the more I do, the more I forget. So it's if I can apply something in terms of like I'm going to focus on the rule of ones. I'm just going to apply on this one practice, and I'm going to master it. Because for me, I can easily go into I'm going to do 300 different things and then quit 301 of them. I'm like
Right.
I'm I'm not going to complete it if I do it
Yeah,
like
I
that.
feel you. No, I can get like that too. Just always a new shiny thing. But every time I have a podcast guest on, I'm like, oh, I want to go study with them. Where are they? I'm looking on their website and I have to really kind of curtail that and go, no,
Yeah,
one
yeah.
per year. And if
Oh,
that
yeah,
itch is still there 6 months later, I'll be looking at your Instagram going, yeah, yeah, fuck it. I've still got that itch to go to Costa Rica. It looks nice, you know?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. That's the I don't know, like finding that is such a practice in terms of nervous system. Just like finding something to master and sticking with it is that's a challenge for especially modern day humans.
I was telling my students the other day, they'd just done their 6 month training with me. And I said, listen, I'm not trying to upsell you here, but it takes 3 or 4 years to get my work, to really get it. And my assistant's there. She's like, yep, I've been training 4 years. And Mark's just made me like co-trainer. And it's like, and that's not a Tibetan master who says 30 years, right? Like I don't have that much to teach. But they looking at me like when I said 3 or 4 years, to me, it's like an undergraduate degree. It's not that big a
Yeah,
deal.
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
even a
Uh-huh.
fucking PhD. It's like
Yeah.
a master's at best. And they
Mhm.
looked at me like I was crazy. And I'm like, well, yeah, I've spent 30 years gaining something that you can gain in 3 years. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And but they looked at me like 3 years, and I'm going to try and do a 2 year certification next year. And I'm
Mhm.
not sure if I'm going to do it in Slovenia where people are a bit more patient. And I'm not sure if anyone will sign up. We'll see. Because I love working with people long term and you have a real relationship with them. And, one of my
Mhm.
students was staying at my house the other day. Danny is this great young Czech kid that's been training with me for a year or two now. And he stayed with me because I trust him and I got a spare room. So like, yeah, stay in the house, man. Save some money, young guy. And he was like, wow, I'm learning a lot just kind of hanging out, like seeing how
Mhm.
you do business. And I'd be like, look, you're welcome to just sit in on the work day and just chill on the sofa back there while I'm working. And
Yeah.
like that kind of menteeship, I feel like is really missing from just doing a quick
Yes.
certification.
Yep, I agree. I think that, and like I always seek a mentor. Even at 40, I feel like there's just value in it's expedited learning. It's skipping the hard stuff. Like some of that. Like you're gonna have your life experiences, and that's hard. That's hard enough. If you're trying to learn something, hiring a coach or a mentor is just the expedited way to get there. And
Nice.
yeah. So.
Great. We better wrap this up. Where do people go to find out about Ryan Carroll?
So you can go to my Instagram, Ryan X Carroll, 2 R's, 2 L's. You can go there and check me out. I have links in the bio there, but I also have a free community on School, and that is just school.com/breathx.
What's that like, man? This school thing. I've heard good and bad things. This Hormozzi's thing, kind of
Yeah, yeah.
colorful, kind of young. What's it like?
It's so I've used Circle as well, which is another community. I've used Mighty Networks. I've used all the communities, and
Yeah,
they're kind
yeah.
of like cumbersome and confusing, and nobody wants to use them. School to me is just like kind of stupid simple. It's just like
Okay.
you go in there. There's the feed. There's a course, a classroom. So for me, classroom is important because I can just dump a lot. I have just dump all my breath practices in there, and assessment tools too. So people can just go and assess, and then do the practices afterwards and create their own thing if they're self-sufficient. If not, and then there's a place for calls too. I do a weekly call with my group, and yeah, it's totally free right now. So but yeah, it's a cool platform. I would suggest it, especially for community, and
You
it's
like it?
it's
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah,
would
I
do
just
it.
I just taking a chance being selfish really to find out about it. So Ryan Carroll, and the website is ryanxcarroll.com, right?
Correct.
Boom. Anything you want to say to finish up?
No, I think that's it, man. I appreciate you having me on, and it's been great meeting you.
Total
Great
pleasure.
chat.